Oh, this one.
After the big...
Okay, it's a 7-minute video called My Favorite Subject in the World. It's called When Does U.S. Debt Become Genuinely Bad? 7-minute video. I want to know. When is it actually bad?
After the big tariff announcement, something happened that shocked economists, and it wasn't the stock market dropping. It was the value of the dollar dropping. Usually in times of market turmoil, it increases because investors...
Everyone, just make sure if you have all of your money in dollars to diversify into either, you could do precious metals or you could do Fortnite V-Bucks. Either one. Fortnite V-Bucks will hold their value. You can have, but you need to have something that is not the American dollar as it weakens. Crypto is a great example. Crypto, CS skins, yes. Dogecoin, yes. Trump coin, yes. Just not
investors
the
are
greenback.
flocking to the U.S. for safety.
We saw exactly the opposite. Money fled from the U.S. for safety instead of to the U.S. for safety for the first time in my memory.
That was a sign that something was getting different and that people weren't just shifting between U.S. assets. They were getting nervous about U.S. assets.
And that was unprecedented and something that woke up, I think, a lot of people about the issues associated with the debt.
Yeah.
That national debt was also one of the main reasons the U.S.'s credit rating was downgraded soon after.
It's not just people like me who've been talking about this for, a couple of decades. The economics is pretty clear.
So let's explain. If the national debt is concerning, when do we have to be seriously worried about it? But first, here's what the debt even is. Congress spends more than it brings in through tax revenue. For 20 years, we've had a budget deficit.
Okay.
2024's $1.8 trillion deficit was added to the combined deficits from the past years. This is the total running national debt.
I can't believe this is the last time right here. The only time in my entire life they didn't run a deficit was like 2 years at the end of the 90s. And then George Bush said, nah. Nah, dude. That shit's gay. That is so gay. And then he's like, we're going to have a war. We're going to have tax cuts. We're going to have... Bush said, yeah, watch this drive and just fucking golf swing. Yeah, 9/11 really did a fucking number, huh? He said, fuck it, we ball. No deficit left behind.
It's a lot. But obviously our economy now is bigger than back then. So here it is as a percentage of GDP. This is a better way of looking at it.
You guys should see this. This is an important chart. I'll move my thing down here. So we haven't had debt to GDP this high since the middle of World War II. We have World War II level debt as if we are fighting a global war, but we are supposedly in good times. So God willing, we don't have any quote unquote bad times or any conflicts because we can't go much higher.
Still a lot. We're at World War II levels.
Oh, don't steal my...
And back then, there was a good reason to go into debt. The U.S. Treasury raised this money by selling bonds.
Buy a bond. You can be the guy to help supply the guns and planes and...
Are they going to make streamers do this in the next war? Am I going to have to shill war bonds to my viewers during World War III?
Thanks.
They still do today, but most Treasury securities that fund the debt aren't sold via celebrities. They're sold at auction. To private investors, to foreign investors, lots of companies and pension funds keep their money in U.S. securities.
Some government debt is actually a good thing because it allows households to basically save in a low-risk asset.
And sometimes it's necessary to go into debt.
Big recessions. We want to maintain the standard of living. Pandemics. We borrowed a lot in the pandemic. Probably a really good thing to do in 2020.
That's exactly when you want to be able to borrow. The problem is we borrowed when we weren't in the crisis.
Which is how we got ourselves into a World War amount of debt. And carrying a large debt is concerning for a few reasons. For one, that's a lot of investors' money going to the government and not these other places.
When they buy a treasury security, they don't buy a corporate equity and give the money to a corporation to invest. They don't stick it in a savings account and have a bank loan it out to build.
They don't buy gifted subs, okay? And therefore, I can't stimulate the economy by buying Uber Eats deliveries of Chipotle. Do you see the fucking problem? Do you see how the economy starts to flatline when everybody has to put their money in bonds? They don't buy CS skins.
a house. That $1.8 trillion is not available to whatever it may be that makes the economy more productive and allows us to live better. And that's why it matters to the average person. It's the opportunity that we're giving up by financing so much federal debt.
Studies have found that if the debt were to go down to here by 2050, incomes per person would be nearly 7% larger.
The thing about the national debt is it affects basically everything in our economic lives and then some, but we don't see it, we don't feel it, many people don't realize it.
And secondly, well, this is what the government spent in 2024. Social Security and healthcare are obviously the big ones. But here, more than was spent on the military, more than everything else spent to run the government, were interest payments on the national debt.
We have so much debt that we're borrowing to pay the interest on the previous debt. Well, that's like getting a new credit card to pay off the old one. And if you're doing that...
Which is base, by the way. If you do that, it's actually a really cool thing to do. Because here's the thing. If that becomes a problem, just get a third credit card to pay off the second one. Do you see how you can't lose? Do you see how there's no way to... No matter what happens, you're already set up because you can just... It's an infinite money glitch. You can borrow as much as you want. Just get the government to bail you out. Get a debt big enough and they will.
You're in trouble.
So right now, if interest rates go up just 1 percentage point more than they're expected to, it adds about $300 billion in borrowing a year.
So if some debt is good, but too much debt can be bad, when does it become bad, like unsustainable bad?
If the publicly held debt goes above roughly 175% of GDP, things get pretty hard at that point, and 200% is really the drop dead limit. And the reason why is...
This guy's like one of those climate scientists that keeps saying, like, we better figure it out soon. Everything that I've read says once you get 120% debt GDP, it's fucking over. Like, that's like where we're at. I don't know if it needs to go to 175. All I've seen is once you hit 120, you can't go back. No one's gone back. And no one breaks above 120 and then figures it out.
Once you hit that limit, you couldn't possibly raise taxes enough at that point to meet the interest payments.
That's the Greek-Portugal meltdown scenario. And when that happens, number one, usually your economy's not in very good shape, so it's not generating a lot of income, so you can't tax it, you can't pay the debt. Suddenly your interest rates go way up because the borrowers want their money back. No one can afford anything. You get a recession on top of everything else. You're having to raise taxes to pay off the borrowers who are demanding their money. They don't care how you're doing. And it's a really, really bad situation, and one that should be avoided because it can be avoided. Because once you're in there, there are no good choices.
So we did this as an outer bound exercise. But some people ask, when could things unravel? Before that. And the answer is, it could be tomorrow. As soon as capital markets believe that Congress and the president are not going to get their act together, everything unravels. And it unravels very...
Well, then I don't have to worry about that then. You're telling me that this all hinges on the world believing in the stability and sanity of Congress and the president, that they're going to get their act together and figure out how to pay for this. Then we're good. We've got a rock solid team, sir. They're stable. They're genius. We're good. We're fucking safe. I would not be worried.
Very quickly.
Sure, this could be triggered when we just objectively borrow more than we can pay back. But whenever investors feel that the US isn't the safest place to put their money, they demand a higher interest rate. That's what happened after the tariffs when the dollar went down.
Dollars are only valuable if you want to hold something that you buy with dollars, and that would be treasuries.
And since the US Treasury has always paid its debt and interest on time, the US securities are considered the least risky investment, so they have the lowest interest rate of anything else on the market. So if interest on a US security goes up, so do mortgages. So do even the safest AAA rated corporate bonds.
Yep.
Everyone in this market is affected.
It ripples through the entire economy.
If the U.S. is riskier to loan to, then your mortgage in the U.S. has to be even higher of a rate, because no one will loan you money when they can just loan the government money. And the government, if that goes up to 6-7%, then yours has to be 7, 8, 9. That's how it goes. So yeah, that is a knock-on effect of the U.S. becoming a riskier place to park your money.
Economy in ways that hurts all of us.
If this happened on a larger scale and interest rates really went up for everything, it could spiral into a fiscal crisis.
Nah.
The problem with a debt crisis is that once it happens, you can't just debt your way out of it.
We might be able to borrow during the next crisis. All we know is we have
First of all, watch us. First of all, fucking watch us. We have and we will. You can't stop us. All right?
less space to do so than we otherwise would have.
We're not there. We're not going to be there tomorrow. But, you know, I always tell people, look, there's no point in finding out how long the world will wait. Let's not run the experiment. Let's just fix the problem and avoid the crisis.
Okay, how? How can the national debt be fixed? Some policymakers argue if the US economy does better, we can basically grow our way out of it. If more people make more money, that's more tax revenue, that's higher GDP, this ratio gets smaller.
Sure.
Economists say this could work if the debt wasn't already so big and spending wasn't also growing.
You can't grow your way out of this. Most spending is already tied to economic growth. You solve the fiscal problem, the spur economic growth.
And experts say the solution to the debt is simple. Congress needs to spend less and bring in more.
We need to do some hard things. We need to honestly fix Social Security, which is headed towards insolvency. Same with one of the trust funds in Medicare. Those require real choices. We do have to make changes to our welfare programs. We do have to look at how our defense procurement programs work and all the money that's wasted there. We do have to put discretionary spending caps on, and we do have to raise taxes. All of those things, which are like not popular political slogans, they have to get done.
We need a grand bargain that says everything's on the table.
It doesn't have to be draconian, but it does have to be different than what we're doing now.
So is the debt bad? It's not until it suddenly is.
Slowly then all at once, you might say. Madeline Marshall. Hey, good video. I can spot the U.S. if they just get over their pride and ask stuck-up sons of bitches. Americans, we need to swallow our pride and ask Wyatt Matcha here for money. I know it feels bad, but we just need to do it. Wyatt, can we get $37 trillion? What happens if this debt problem happens to every Western nation at once? I live in the UK. A bigger recession. I mean, it happened in the UK before, after World War II. That was when UK had to do this really, really, really painful revaluing of their currency because they were trying to pretend they were still a big dog financially. But after World War II, they had, almost no colonies. They had massive, massive, massive debts. They had no export growth. And America took it all. And then the UK had to pretend that they were still a big dog, and they had to revalue the shilling way down. And it was kind of an embarrassing reset. And they had a deep recession. Anyway, it is familiar what U.S. is going through right now, where they're kind of pretending to be more solvent than they are. So they should have kept their colonies? Obviously not. But there's a difference between what they did in Hong Kong, right, where they back away of their own choice, and then what they did post World War II, which is they ran out of money, ran out of the ability to even keep the colonies maintained, and usually had to run with the tail between their legs. Does this mean a revalue of the dollar at some point? You don't really have to revalue the dollar in a floating fiat system, but what you would have to do is inflate to pay the debt. You'd have to just print a bunch of money, and it would dramatically make the dollar weaker. It's not you don't pick a number to revalue it at like you do in the old times, but when you get to that point of the cycle, it's not good. It's not good, dude. Weakening the dollar to make exports more competitive. Yeah, people say that. I mean, it's true, but there's the Econ 101 aspect of it, which it would do this. And then, the next level is that okay, but the medium-term process of that is enormous inflationary pain for everybody. If we close our eyes and go, la, 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 maybe the debt will go away. I'm not seeing ideas from anyone else. Hung Sheldon's got an idea. What if every time somebody asks for their money back, we go, what? No, I didn't borrow any money. Nah, you playing. Nah, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And then just ignore it. What money? We don't even use money here. Act offended? Bro, maybe you owe me money. Telling Japan, What if we used our one time with every borrower? It's actually such a good idea. It's actually such a good idea. This is my one time. Japan, China, Korea, the UK. This is my one time. Just cut me a break. No more debt. Just one mulligan. We start over. Couldn't we just not pay and then fight them off with our $1 trillion a year military? It's not, I hear that a lot. It's not a case of them not, like if we don't pay Japan, it's not like Japan's going to be like, all right, we're going to attack you now and get our money. It's that nobody will loan us money anymore. That's what happens. You know, you're still running these massive deficits, but no one will loan you money because you've defaulted. And once you default even once, it has this long-lasting effect for decades on your borrowing costs, which again makes mortgages more expensive in America, makes everything more expensive. And like, for example, Greece, when they've defaulted, you know, their borrowing costs are really high for many, 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 many years afterwards. Argentina, people don't trust these countries because they've defaulted. America has not defaulted, essentially since the War of 1812. So we have a rock solid reputation. We always pay back the debt. If you didn't pay it back, you'd lose a lot of. Why is debt just an American built thing? I think a big part of it is how easy it is to get debt here. You know, we have probably some of the best interest rates in the world on things. You can get, for example, American debt for housing is incredible because we can get 30-year fixed mortgages. That doesn't exist in like any other country. You can get a 30-year mortgage at a fixed interest rate. That's an American privilege. I mean, so it makes you all addicted to debt because it's so easy to get the debt. Do we have any idea how much debt is owed to borrowers inside versus outside the U.S.? Yeah, we have the exact numbers. I don't have them on top of my head, but you can look it up. I mean, listen, I own U.S. Treasuries, so some of the debt's owed to me. So when you guys are talking about not paying it, I get pretty pissed, all right? If Trump defaults on the debt he owes me, I'm going to lose it. Can you go to Chili's, please? Yes. I can't say how, when, or why. I can say there's a Chili's in the future. I can't even say, I don't even know when. But I do know that big progress has been made on something, and Chili's is involved as well, and we're making progress. That's all I can say. Just know that there's forward motion on Chili's related endeavors. Can we sell one of the states and pay off the debt with that? Dude, you're joking. But unironically, at some point, some of the options on the table are like selling Yellowstone National Park. Like, we need assets on the asset side of the balance sheet that are worth trillions. There's not many things. The things they're talking about are like revaluing the gold. All the gold in Fort Knox is currently valued at 1972 prices. They're going to revalue it to $10,000 an ounce or whatever and be like, well, we have trillions of dollars of gold. You need more on the asset side to make you seem like you're capable of paying your debts. To what degree are European economies affected by the end of the debt cycle? The main theorized way is that the end of this global debt cycle could cause deep, deep cracks in the EU as a whole program. Because the EU has a shared currency, but not a shared debt, which means countries in the EU can overspend and it affects the currency they all share. And so that's always been a problem since the beginning because they don't share tax collection, they don't share revenue, they only share a currency. And so it does make cracks that eventually could become wider or bigger. I don't think that's near term or anything, but that's a problem. Like you know, Greece almost blew up the EU with its debt crisis. They had to bail them out. So, you know, this is like the weakness at the heart of the EU is that fiscal problem. Might be a dumb question. That's how the EU does it. You know, it helps them conduct commerce across country borders. It's awesome for that purpose. The problem is that some countries can dramatically overspend. And then the bailout required to save them hurts the currency and they don't share a currency. So the problems of one become the problems of all. Do you see any way in which it's feasible politically for the incumbent party to completely cut the deficit and remain in the White House post-term? This is the big question. This is the big question of the day is who can make the hard choices? Who can cut military spending and not lose their seat? Who can, increase taxes and not get kicked out? Who can do this? It's the problem. And that is why people are saying that it won't happen until there's a crisis, until there's a problem, until we hit the wall. Until people realize that things are so bad that someone has to step up, nobody will voluntarily vote for the hard choices. That's the great fucking conflict of our age that we're dealing with. That's the end of the debt cycle problem. Why don't presidents make these choices during their second term on the way out? I mean, Biden could have done something in his first term, but the truth is they have a party. In America, we have such a deeply divided party system that even if the president was on his way out, him making the bad choices would tank his party. And then the next party would probably undo their choices they just made anyway. So it's hard. It's hard to do it early. It's hard to you can only really do it after the problem has happened. When you borrow money or when you make borrowing money easy, line goes up. Okay, line goes up. And you get more, you're pulling forward from the future, right? So there's more economic activity happening now than there would normally be because you have borrowed from the future to buy things now, to build things now. So there's more factories getting built, more people doing things, more jobs getting created. And then that debt gets greater and greater. You keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing and borrowing and borrowing until eventually the interest payments on the debt get so high that you have to start beginning to pay it off. And then you get this downward cycle because now there's less activity happening because so much money's going towards interest. Now the money you would have spent to hire that guy or buy the bike or buy the car is being spent on interest payments from all his previous debt. It's the fucking natural downturn that this upturn caused. This is the debt cycle, all right? But in the real world, as this is coming down, we usually find some new way to juice it back up. So it doesn't actually go all the way back down. So there's the mini debt cycle, which is this. This is like a recession, okay? And then it's all part, if you want to zoom out, I'm just going to zoom out. It's all part of a larger debt cycle, okay? That eventually gets to the actual peak of the larger debt cycle. That's what we're at. We're at the part of a larger, a big, a grand debt cycle. And that's when it has to start actually going down, okay? That's when you have to de-lever. Or the way Ray Dalio would put it is like straight down. Like a World War II. Like something big that resets it so you can start again. That's the debt cycle, okay? So like this right here would be like 2008, I mean, we're assuming we're at the top. This could go up 10 more sine waves. I don't know. But like this, these are recessions, but we're at the end of a larger, greater debt cycle that we're now at 120% debt to GDP. And that's the problem. Like we're now getting so massively in debt that in a recession, we couldn't do our normal game plan. How do we get out of that last debt to GDP? That's a great question. That's why I want to do. Actually, I'm so glad you asked that because I would love to tell you about this guy. Where's the one where he looks kind of flirty? This one. Here, for Pride Month, I'll put the flag in the background. It's Gay Eisenhower. Dwight D. Eisenhower, dude. For Pride Month. Look at him. He's slaying. What I would like, one of my themes that I want to come back to over and over again is that, whether you are more of an Eisenhower or more of an FDR, they both have a place and they both really contributed to making America prosperous. The thing they had in common, whether you were a tax and spend liberal like FDR who raised taxes and raised spending to get us out of the depression, or you are a true fiscal conservative like Eisenhower who deeply cut spending, military spending, massively cut military spending. In fact, had a great speech about the military industrial complex and how we have to make sure not to take over our lives. If you can cut spending and kind of maintain taxes, what he did. He didn't even, he probably like down trickled like this. But they both had a deep sense of like, we have to be able to afford this. And so, Eisenhower is one of the GOAT presidents. I think he's incredible. He's what made this possible. Instead of like undoing all of what FDR did on the new programs, he kept them and found a way to afford them. It's incredible. So I think both of them are awesome. I think what we have today is leadership that has nowhere near what these guys had. Nowhere near. The leadership today lies to us and pretends that it will ever raise taxes or cut spending. It does neither. So yeah, we would need someone like an Eisenhower right now, since we have World War II level debt, to come in and find out how we can get back towards balance, which he did. I mean, Eisenhower's speech, I wonder if I could pull it up. Eisenhower military industrial complex speech. This is like the last thing he said on his way out of the door. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We must take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry, we don't have that anymore, can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial military machine of defense with our peaceful methods and goals so that security and liberty may prosper together. This guy was a GOAT. These two combined to honestly create all of the 30 years of American prosperity. These two together did so much work for America having 30 golden years. It was Kobe and Shaq. And we don't have any leadership anywhere close to this for a long time. And Reagan. These two and Reagan. Yeah, fucking Ronald Reagan, dude.